Welcome back to Simon and White and the podcast at the crossroads of media, business, and politics. I'm Christian White, and joined as always by Mark Simon. If I can talk, Mark, please say hello.
Hey, how is everybody doing? It's been a while.
It has. You were in Taiwan, and now I see you were in Bucolic, New Jersey,
Taiwan.
right?
Yes, I was in lovely Taiwan, and unfortunately, we both had the schedule. We couldn't really do this and have our conversation. So we're back to being teenage. We were teenage girls just texting each other the whole time. So I guess a sexist would say, as they would say something like that.
There was a Babylon Bee article about how a Gen Xer actually just called someone else just to chat, and they thought it was so bizarre that they staged an intervention. Just the idea you'd pick up a phone like you would in the 90s and catch up with someone, just completely alien.
We all have those. I am becoming one of those older fellows, but I don't even text. I don't even call my kids anymore. I basically say, "How you doing? How's it going? How's everything going? How you doing? How's it going? What's up?" And then all of a sudden, my phone will ring. You know what I'm saying? And it's like my son called me today. "Hey, Dad, I got an interview." "Great. Who are you going to interview with?" He goes, "Cannabis company."
God.
Well, the thing is you can't do anything about that. You just like say, okay. And all I'm thinking to myself is, how do I stuff this at a later date? You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
The parenting rule 101, never say no right away. Plot, collude with the wife, and then find a way to get rid of it. Collude with the partner and then get rid of it.
Just be like, it's going to be hard to contribute to your 401k if they're paying you in hundreds. I guess you could take money to a bank. Meanwhile, I got 50s out of an ATM the other day. I didn't ask for them. I'm like, it's almost like Confederate. I haven't seen these in so long. It's like Confederate money, except that they have Ulysses S. Grant on the cover.
I get 50s all the time in Taiwan. I cashed like 5,000 the other day. I had too much, and they gave it to me all in 50s. 50 is a great bill. It's a fantastic bill because 100 is a little, pretentious sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People still look at you. A 20, not enough. 50, just right. Unfortunately, with inflation. In the Biden times, the 50 is the Biden bill. That's what we'll call it. Put Joe Biden's picture on it.
Right.
That's it.
Well, to paraphrase Yakov Smirnov, if you're in Northern California this week, you don't go to the party comes to you. Xi Jinping finally having his summit with Biden that Biden has been begging for all year long. Series of cabinet secretaries off to Beijing during last summer, the summer of love, to try and get who knows what. And it seems like they made some pretty big concessions in trade, in sanctions, in AI as it applies to military in order to get this sort of a summit, if we can call it that. What do you think about how this was framed up and how it went down?
I think the worst thing that came out of this is that we saw that we don't have the ability to deal with these people, the Communist Party. And it's not that we as a country don't have the ability, but look at that opening statement from President Biden. It's a nothing. It's awful. It's essentially, everybody from the left of Sophie Richardson and Human Rights Watch to the right is criticizing it. You don't see anybody standing behind it. He talks about all of nothing. Everything's nothing. And basically this was a summit on the belief by the engagement people that they have to have a summit. And that's why all the people are, oh, this is great, restart everything. This was a disaster for the U.S. in many ways. But first of all, it's not been a good meeting. There is nothing substantial there. Xi Jinping has looked across the table and seen somebody that, he's a tiger. Trump gives him way too many compliments, but he's not wrong. Xi Jinping is a tiger. So you had this bizarre situation where you had the tiger, who is the sick man of Asia, his nation, versus an older president who has the more powerful economy. And you almost saw it equal out in that meeting. In other words, who was giving what, who was giving this. It's almost like we're begging them just, until we get our problems taken care of, this is not going to happen. I would have to say that this solidifies in the minds of many in the Democratic foreign policy establishment that Joe got to go. I don't see it. I mean, there are responsible people in that establishment. A lot of people who care very much about Israel, who are now seeing is, because Biden's about to turn on them. We all know that's going to come. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to have somebody. Anybody else would have done a better job. Anybody. Gavin Newsom would have done a better job. And it was just really not good. And I don't fault the guy, but it's just, you watch it. It's lethargic. There's nothing good about it. That's the override. There's no policy stuff for us to talk about, Kristen. Oh, well, what did they do? There's no policy. Oh, we're going to have another deal on fentanyl. Great. A little bit late for a lot of people, then unfortunately some people we know. 70,000 people this year are going to die of fentanyl. 70,000. And we, that's the response. I think we've lost so much in the terms because of our partisanship. There's something deeply wrong that we let 70,000 people die, or that we have on college campuses, young people celebrating mass murder. And there's just really a debasing of, and I'm not trying to be too gloom and doom, but I was just shocked. I really thought when they were coming in, I didn't think there were a lot of huge concessions given up. I thought they were concessions, but I didn't think it was like moving the world. But then it was just the opening statement was like, okay, here's my opening statement. Let's meet. Let's have 15 people on each side, which guarantees nothing gets done. Remember Trump in Osaka? 5 guys on each side. That was it. And Trump wasn't happy about that. He thought that was too many. I happen to know that.
If you look at pictures of Yalta and Potsdam, you don't see like 20 people sitting next to Roosevelt or Truman.
Number one rule.
This back when you could fit the entire State and War Department into the old executive office building next to the White House too.
Yeah, I mean, this is all these people. All you have to do is look at the number of people lined up here. The Chinese were probably going, "Who the hell do we get?" I'm sure, like, there's the cook on the end of the Chinese table. they don't have that many people. I mean, who showed, like, third deputy protocol officer, And the funny thing about the Chinese, they don't even feel compelled to put a woman up there. There's not one woman up there. I'm sure somebody's go, "Oh, it's a mantle." Like, they have a panel, they call it a mantle or something like that. The commies don't care. And in so many ways, there's something going on. I think it has to come. We pay the price for it. A lot of people don't understand force. They don't understand mean people. They don't understand evil people, And it's like, they have all men, no women. You know why they have all men, no women? Because they can. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. We could have a whole talk about how everyone's setting up stuff all day long, how women are going to change the Communist Party. No, they're not, because those guys won't let them. You know what I'm saying? You've got to have a democracy where women could actually vote before any of this happens, which is the most amazing thing when I meet these women sinologists and they just fake it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, like, oh, yes, women are making progress in China. No, they're not. They're not doing anything. They do what they're told to do and what they're let to do, Anyway, we're off on a topic there, but what do you think happened? What do you think happened? I mean, it's still happening right now, but what do you think happened?
Yeah, it's a whole lot of nothing, it seems. It's on the sidelines of APEC. This actually isn't a true summit of the Reagan-Gorbachev style or Eisenhower-Khrushchev, something big where you're going to go and try and make a big deal or have some sort of breakthrough. Apparently one of the interesting little snippets I thought was interesting was a Japanese, I believe, general complaining on the record, actually, which was unusual for them, about the U.S. talking so much about guardrails. Oh, we want there to be guardrails on the relationship with China. Previously, they talked about a floor, but the implication is that China can do whatever it wants, and we'll always sort of be willing to forgive them in order that, this relationship, we just have to keep talking. We have to get military exchanges going back and forth, which make no sense to me. We get no value out of those at all. It's weakness being demonstrated, weakness and nothingness. And also, one of the other little concessions going in, not to China, but just overall, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, sort of the one and only trade-related initiative of this administration. And they just totally dropped the digital part, which was the only significant part of the trade part, which was the only significant part of this deal. So it's like our signature economic vehicle that's aimed mainly at the Indo-Pacific just went kaput. It's just rudderless and weak.
I mean, do you think? I mean, what's the time frame? I mean, it's too cynical to say, oh, we'll know by the end of the day or next week that this means nothing. But when's the time when we all look around and say this meant nothing? In other words, is it after Christmas? You know what I'm saying? Is it like when does the Chinese behavior return to exactly what it has been?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of these summits, I don't know if there'll be a joint statement, but like every G7, every G20, before the leaders get there, diplomats who are wasting their lives, they may get paid okay for bureaucrats and live in fancy homes when they're not in their home country. But, on these joint statements, and it's like, is anyone going to remember any of this as soon as the ink is dry and the leaders on their planes and go home? No, they just start working on next year's joint statement. This one, I think we'll know. I mean, pretty soon it's dead. I doubt we'll see any change in fentanyl. It's the precursors. So you have chemical precursors to fentanyl that go to Mexico, where they're turned into fentanyl, and that works its way into fake pills, where you think you're buying some Adderall from your friendly drug dealer who's mixed it with fentanyl to give it
I think the other thing too is I think there's a great dishonesty in the DEA and Homeland Security and everybody else in understanding how small fentanyl shipments are. In other words, I was speaking with somebody who's former DEA. I know him. I've known him for a few years. And he told me the difference with fentanyl and everything else is, he said, basically one container of fentanyl precursors get through. He said that runs a lab for 2 years.
Wow.
He said that the distribution is taken care of for 2 years, one container. It's not like marijuana where you have to have brick after brick, or cocaine where it goes up by the kilo. It's not that way. It's basically fentanyl is so dangerous, so powerful. It's not even like heroin. It's just, they can make it. The precursors are there. Now they've got the synthetics that they figure out other things on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not something that the commitment to stop it has to be a whole commitment by the Chinese government. They're not going to do it. They don't care. They don't see it, and I think that's the thing. The tragedy to me of all of this is that China continues to go. It's going down, and I almost sense this is my prediction. My prediction is, the next thing we're going to start hearing from the China community is bailout. Like like an Argentinian type bailout. Some type of way for them to not pay duties, for them to collect duties from imports or something to get them money. I think it's coming. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they have in their mind that somehow they can get something from the West and bail it out. Now, why wouldn't they? We give the Iranians $6 billion here, $10 billion there. So the Chinese do what? They find some way to tax our companies that we don't retaliate. They tax exports to the U.S. or something like that. If something's going to happen like that, and we won't, and they'll do it. Now, of course, companies will leave, but I really think that their economy is in such bad shape right now. We're going to see them do something. And I don't know what it's going to be, but they're already warming up people over here for it, But in conclusion, I just have to say, Kristen, I'll ask you: can you see anything that came from this quote unquote meeting? I won't even call it a summit.
Yeah, no, nothing of value. I'm trying to think what else the White House is calling deliverables. Nothing really. There's some agreement on artificial intelligence and not using it and managing nuclear weapons.
The Screen Actors Guild has probably a better agreement than they do.
That's right. Well, also, to the extent that you need using AI in other fields of the military aside from nuclear weapons, we would have the big advantage there. And of course, if we sign an agreement or make an agreement, we abide by it, and the Chinese ignore it. So, it's a bunch of agreements, a bunch of protocol. The Chinese are once again getting away with saying that the leader must, never see protesters from the time he arrives at the airport to all of the venues he goes to. And it seems like we've accommodated that. The meeting took place way outside of San Francisco. Maybe the Secret Service
didn't even
carjacked.
Yeah, they didn't even release. VOA released it last night because they were getting so much shit that basically the White House released it through VOA. They gave VOA Fiolis or something like that. It's a joke. It's poorly managed. And then we have the problem we have in this country, and I will say this right now, it'll lead me into my next thing, is we have a significant portion of people in this country who are in the China, who work the China issue, who quite frankly, I almost think they need to make a decision. I would call them, if you're a member of the National Committee for U.S.-China Relations, I think there's a lot of what you do that cannot be described as in the interest of the United States. If you're a member of the U.S.-China Committee, of even people at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, these are people who are not operating in the interest of the United States. They are almost equivalent to me, and I'm getting in trouble here, I'm sure, if somebody sees this. Right, people see this. They are almost like the mobsters on the street that says, hey, you get to run your store, your kids get to go to school, you just got to do it the way we want to do it. These are the people who basically enable that, and they're not interested one bit. The number of second-rate people in our country and around the world who are working to help the CCP is amazing. And the one thing I'll always know is they're so second-rate. I've never lost to them. Never lost anything to them. In any debate, any exchange, sure. In Hong Kong, they took our newspaper, but, China's spending billions to basically keep my boss, Jimmy Lai, in jail, and he's sitting in jail and forcing them to spend billions of U.S. dollars around the world in their PR efforts. And these, right. I think really I'm rambling on here for a second, but I just think that we're reaching the point now, and this meeting between Xi and Biden really highlighted it to me. I saw people, I was watching CNN, and literally the host was just looking at the guy like he was from planet Mars, like, this is a significant move. This enables the Americans, the United States to, and the guy was like, the lady was like, the host was like, what are you talking about? What are they doing? That nothing's happened here. Even the Fox, of course, and Newsmax and all those other people are skeptical, but even the left is skeptical of this now. They're like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this?
Right. And also just the lack of an explicit rejection of decoupling, and back to the statement of, well, we want China's economy to grow. I don't think we really do.
Who cares?
It's be awfully good at diverting it to military purposes.
Who cares if their economy grows?
Right.
I don't care. It doesn't matter to us. If China's economy doesn't, that's the dumbest thing I heard that and I was like, what? Who cares if China's economy grows? I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to America if China's economy grows or doesn't grow. Because what we produce and what we do, it will go to Vietnam. It will go to Japan. It will go to Brazil. It will go to India. It's a fun, it moves. It doesn't have to go to one spot. Well, wouldn't it be better if China? Doesn't matter. They don't matter. That's where you miss, I hate to say it, DT. You know what I'm saying? He would know that. Who cares?
Right. He knows how to, understand cash flows. Crossing the Taiwan Strait, they're kind of gearing up for their, when we have our Iowa caucus, they have their presidential election. The incumbent Tsai Ing-wen is termed out, and her vice president is leading the charge for the DPP, the incumbent, sort of skeptical of China party. But it seems like the opposition kind of might be getting their act together. What do you think? You just put out a piece on this on Substack.
Here's the point. The thing is that the DPP is deeply unpopular in Taiwan. If they had a decent opposition, they'd be out tomorrow. They'd win 35 to 40% of the vote. They are a left-wing socialist party. They have crappy economic policies. They are as woke can be. It's basically a government that probably is run from an arts cafe someplace. They are completely dependent on the United States for any advice in terms of anything militarily. They are benefiting, quite frankly, off a Taiwan military that was a serious operation for many, many years. Went soft when Qin Bin came in and Ma Ying-jeou, and has now just started to come back under the U.S. tutelage. In other words, the U.S. is, we've got hundreds, and I mean hundreds, above 400 or 500 advisors over there working with them every day, trying to get them back up. And my understanding is they are making some significant progress. But what's happened is we have the KMT, which I think everyone knows, the old KMT, and that's got their candidate, one of the mayors. And then they've got the DPP, which is Lai, and we all know him. That's the one I just talked about. But we've got this new party that came out a few years ago called the TPP. And the TPP is Mayor Ko from Taipei. And he is the not politics anymore. I'm a populist. I'm this. Well, he has been holding he's holding even or a little bit above the KMT candidate. They're both holding somewhere around 20%, 21, 22%, whereas the DPP is holding around 33, 34%. And there are some outlying polls. What's happened is they know they can't beat the DPP on their own. So if you can't beat the DPP on your own, you combine. Here's the problem. The DPP is their own ideological venture. The KMT is basically just shoeshine boys for China. Everybody kind of knows that. The TPP under Mayor Ko is always trying to be different. So if you combine the two of them, basically the idea is you'll have the majority and you will win. And that'll happen. So they have come together. They are trying to determine right now who will be the front runner. Here's the point that I make. There is no way in hell the U.S. or anybody else, if the KMT ends up the front runner, the DPP wins going away. Because the people who are backing Mayor Ko are mostly young. They are not fans of the KMT. They hate the KMT far worse than they hate the DPP. Yeah. Far worse. That's well known. I wouldn't even take another argument from somebody seriously. They don't like the KMT, and that's why they don't like the DPP. They want an alternative, but they don't dislike the DPP to the level they dislike the KMT. In fact, the mayor was just asked today. They said, they asked Mayor Ko, a reporter said, you used to say that you hated the KMT. He said, well, I hate the DPP more. Well, his followers don't hate the DPP more. So my belief is if Mayor Ko comes out of this whole little negotiation, which is not done yet, if he comes out of this whole little exercise as the leader, that's probably the biggest threat to the DPP, because I think the KMT people will follow pretty much no matter what. Okay, That'll happen there. However, if the KMT, which I think they will try all they can to do, comes out in the top spot, which they would rather do as a party. See, because then it doesn't matter if they lose or not. They're still the number one party, and they've destroyed their rival in the TPP down the road. And today, the photo of them coming together was very strange. You had Mayor Ko standing there like this with his hand, standing with his hand in there, just kind of standing. And then you had Ma Ying-jeou, the former president, Eric Chu, the former candidate, and Mayor Hui, the KMT. So there was three KMT guys and Mayor Ko, the TPP guy. You could just look at it and say, this is not going to work because these guys are going to fight. So here's what I'm saying is the only difference that I see coming down the road is the DPP is going to have to work a lot harder. They're going to have to pick people that can win. Right now, they're looking at B. Kim from the U.S. the ambassador to the U.S. as the running mate. I think she's an okay choice. I think she reminds people who the U.S. I think she'll get support from the U.S. in many ways, but she's a lousy politician. I mean, she's got a bad track record, and she's not basically relatable. The other problem is, quite frankly, once again, the DPP is running something that they've always had trouble with. She is not known to be pro-family. She is single. It does not relate to younger people well. Again, the arts cafe people, everybody marching in the marches loves her, and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, on the ground, I think she's a liability. I think he needs to go find somebody else. There's other people in the DPP he can find. I think they will do just fine, and then just have her play a prominent role, running all over the place, being the expert on U.S. relations. But I do think, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions in a second. I do think we are going to see the KMT not easily give in. I think they want the top spot. I think if they come for the top spot, I think there's a good chance Mayor Koo walks away from the whole thing. And then they're just right back where they were. It's a mess. Both parties are fighting. They'll be fighting each other. I've always believed one thing. I believe that Beijing's probably very happy about trying to beat Lai, but I think the realistic people inside the pro-Beijing camp want one thing and one thing only. They basically want to see William Lai of the DPP elected with the smallest amount of support possible. And then when they don't support him anymore, he doesn't have that 50% margin, he's down in the low 40s, then they start attacking him. He doesn't have the mandate. They start negotiating with Ma Ying-jeou. Who will negotiate with them? He'll pull a John Kerry so quick, the DPP won't know what hit him. He'll be over there negotiating. The mayors of the KMT mayors will be over there negotiating. The Chinese are very, very good. It's a small island. It's economically dependent on China. They can do it. But
what
anyway,
do you think I'm curious if the opposition does pull its act together and doesn't put the KMT at the top of the ticket, but puts the former Taipei mayor at the top of the ticket, let's say they win. I mean, is that foreign policy wise, is that just like electing the KMT, or are they going to sort of try and balance the U.S. and China?
I think the U.S. and I think what will happen is, my personal belief is, what will happen is the Chinese and everybody will be playing games all day long. I think there's a pretty good chance that we see a vice president from the KMT basically made powerless. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely powerless. I think, the DP, I think the one thing I do say is I think Ke is completely acceptable to the U.S., although he pulled a boneheaded stunt today. He said the AIT called him and asked him if there was any Chinese pressure. I have a tough time believing that we did that.
Right.
That would be a very junior person who did that. That would be somebody not very wise. Even if someone called him to congratulate him, that would be unwise. They're very careful about who they talk to over there, about what they say. Even I've written articles before, and I've had the local press pick up those articles and say, well, everybody knows Mark Simon's very close with the government, so this is what they really think. And I'm like going, thank God you're like on a Chinese blog somewhere that nobody reads. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not true. But the thing is that, I don't know, Kristen. I mean, what do you think the reaction of the U.S. would be to a TPP president?
There's so few people who follow this, so the experts would probably breathe a sigh of relief, because even though the DPP has been very careful not to declare independence, which everyone, thought they would the first go around with Chen, they've been certainly beaten down by China to an extent with the constant encircling and crossing of the center line with Navy and aviation assets, et cetera. But I just don't think you'd see it elicit much of a reaction here, because currently I think Americans don't see a Taiwanese face. They don't sort of I think that Taiwan would defend itself if attacked. I think a lot of Americans think it's just a liability. I do disagree with that. But because neither, frankly, Republicans or Democrats really talk up Taiwan for its greatest asset, that it's proof that you don't need the Chinese Communist Party to have an ethnically Chinese country run itself. I just don't think it's really registering that much over here yet. Also, that we've failed to, for a long time, Israel was actually a tough sell to American conservatives because it was run by socialists. And that changed when Likud started winning. But similar with Taiwan, they could use some tough love talk from the U.S. about, okay, we know you want a trade deal, but frankly, we have low tariffs on you and you have low tariffs on us. We'll work out this tax deal, a tax treaty that's been pending. But, labor reforms, cut the cost of electricity, reduce your vulnerability to China. I mean, that they are totally dependent for their internet's going out when they go to war with China, if that happens. Banking there is second rate. The military, as you point out, is third rate. Hopefully it's coming up a bit, especially with the sale of U.S. weapons, a lot of which are in backlog, of course. They're going to Ukraine. So I don't know. It's a pretty dire situation. The flip side is that, you have some hawkish voices over here who are convinced that Xi is going to invade next year because he wants to get in while Biden is still president.
That's true.
I don't believe that. I don't think he's just going to time it by a U.S. political schedule. I think a lot of people just praying for the status quo.
I myself think that we forget how weak China is right now in many ways. And the simple fact of the matter is, the other thing, too, is two other things have started to happen in the Pacific. The first is the U.S. Navy has probably decided that Taiwan shouldn't fall. In other words, that's probably a strategic decision made. And as anybody who knows, U.S. policy in the Pacific is basically run by the U.S. Navy. In other words, you can be a undersecretary for East Asia Pacific. Doesn't mean shit if CINCPAC fleet disagrees with you. You know what I'm saying? Because magically, as a guy told me one time, he said there was something that happened in Southeast Asia, and they wanted some, we're going to show the flag. And it was like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't get any ships down there. We're kind of busy right now. And it was like, it was something with Thailand. Something with Thailand. We wanted to show the Thais that we had their back on something. And our military guys were like, nope, they're still effing us on something. So no, we don't have their back. I was in, because I remember this because when I used to be in shipping. I can't remember the yearly annual military exercise with the Thais every year down there. I can't remember the name of it.
Tiger something or other.
Something.
Yeah.
But the shipping company I was with, we supported it, and I was the guy who did it for 2 or 3 years. I can't remember, years ago. And that happened there. He goes, no, Mark. He said, CINCPAC fleet and the 7th Fleet run the operations down here because they wanted to do something. Oh, they wanted a port call to show when the Secretary of State or somebody showed up or something, Madeleine Albright or somebody showed up, and they were like, we're busy, we're not coming. And my friend, he was working in the State Department. He said he'd only been there about 7 years, and he said, the funny thing was the political appointees were incredulous this would happen. And all the State Department people were like, what are you kidding? Are you kidding? It's the Navy. They do what the hell they want to do. So my point is I think the U.S. Navy realizes that. And I think the other thing is certainly the Japanese and also now the Koreans recognize that China in Taiwan, much more for Korea, people don't really realize that, really controls a lot. If Korea is imagine if you're a Korean tanker and you're having trouble. If Taiwan's not there, you got to go all the way around up to Hokkaido and come back down, and then you got the Russians to worry about. In other words, you're basically going to go all the way up, or you got to go all the way up to the south, go through the straits or something like that. It's a very, very difficult run. And I had a big argument with Wolfowitz about this. It's not just going, 3 extra days. That adds that's 3 extra days on thousands of ships. That's tens of thousands of ship days and inefficiencies and cost and everything like that. And then when the Chinese decide, when you got merchant ships going, when the Chinese decide that they get missiles that go out to Guam, you know what I'm saying, or they're flying bombers out or something like that, unharassed, come on. I think the thing is really in my mind, I think that's why when you mentioned earlier, the Japanese guy said, hey, what are you talking about? I think the Japanese are much more aggressive. And I think one of the things that we have is that's it. Also, if Rahm Emanuel is ambassador, he'll probably declare war already, because he's the greatest ambassador we've had in Asia in years. And I love him. He's just up there causing so much trouble. Japanese love him. They love the guy. They literally think he's the greatest ever.
Because he's been tweeting, he's been saying tough things about China. I'm sure Nick Burns.
He also delivers too. He delivers. Like, so for example, we happen to know that the Japanese are the only ones who are not having their weapon systems delayed. Everything's going to, the Vinderman boys and everybody else and the Ukrainian suck up all our stuff for trying to suck up everything. The Japanese are not having their stuff. Japanese and the Saudis, all their stuff is showing up. That's the stuff that's showing up. Yeah, that's my understanding. I was told that's one of the things about RAM is that essentially that's it. And also the Japanese are retooling. I think we're going to see one thing out of the Japanese here in the next 3 or 4 years. I think they're going to start really start taking care of U.S. ships. I mean, we're much more of a dry dock program over there to free our dry docks over here for construction and things like that, and free our workforce for construction more than anything else. We have in the U.S., our biggest problem in my mind is we just don't have the workers who can build things. If you watch football now, they have these commercials called Build Submarines. If you ever watch it, it's like a really weird. I haven't seen them. Build submarines. And you're like, what the hell is that? It's basically trying to get support to build more submarines because the damn things cost, $5 billion. But also it's meant to get people to work there. It's hard. I mean, the guy who welds submarines or does all that work, that's a very high-end job. You need a lot of skill sets, and we don't have them. But the thing is, for me, I really think that Taiwan, I do think that if Ko is the front runner, my only thing with him is I don't see the KMT leaving him alone. That's the problem. I think Ma and Chu are going to get in there, and they're going to start. Ma's not going to be able to keep his mouth shut. He's trying to pretend I'm really the power behind things. He is like that. He's personally like that. I'm the power behind the throne. Really, it's me. That's what he's trying to convince to people, because that's what he's telling China all the time. I really call this Mayor Ke is not that type of guy. I've seen that guy. He's the turd in the punch bowl, man. And
right. Well, do you buy off the KMT just by saying you're going to deregulate or open the doors to more business from China or to China? I mean, it takes two to tango, right? Is Beijing going to go along with that without?
Well, I think one of the things is people don't like it when I say it, but I do think this. I think one of the promises of Ma and some of these other people is, quite frankly, not Ma, but of the TPP, is they do offer economic hope. That's the problem with the DPP. The DPP is literally, every time you bring up a subject like immigration or something like that, they're like, ooh, they don't care. Like I said, they're all sitting in arts cafes. They all complain, like they go, wages in Taiwan are so low. All right, open up, have international companies show up, and the international companies will hire more people and treat competition. You would be shocked. You would be shocked. I told somebody one time, this is a shitty thing to say, but I was in a room with a bunch of the expat professionals there. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at them, and not one person runs a business, not one person, nothing like you would get in Hong Kong or Singapore or Japan. You know what I'm saying? And they're nice guys, and they mean well, but they actually have no clue when it comes to what an economy needs. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're just amazed that I'm involved in construction over there. They're just amazed that when I was telling we're looking at basically selling a food business, and I'm selling it. Oh, you guys own that? Yeah, we owned that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, they're like, oh, and it's like, I was just with these guys. They don't that's the problem with Taiwan. The problem with Taiwan is the president and the DPP. They have two causes over there. And those causes are essentially not falling into China, which everybody is. And the second thing is this Western wokeism. They're very woke. They're very they're into everything over there. My favorite thing over there is like, oh, it's a colonial power this and a colonial power that. And I'm going like, I wouldn't. How is that an issue? Well, the KMT was a colonial power. I said, the first people that showed up here were unless you were a native up in the woods, you know what I'm saying? Right. And they probably showed up and killed somebody too. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, can we stop with this bullshit? Actually somebody told me if you literally, there's no such thing as a non-colonial power in Taiwan. It's kind of like out west, you know what I'm saying? Did you ever hear that guy one time? It was a great line. They were going like, well, the colonial powers came here and, wrecked everything. And the guy said, he goes, so like, in other words, if we'd have waited for you to show up, the Indians would have had AK-47s by then. You know what I'm saying? In other words, like, what are you talking about? It's amazing how silly it is. It's kind of like when you see, and you are right, Christian, you're very right. And you should expand that is, I think the problem that we have is that nobody speaks truth to power. I hate that term, but then truth to power in Taiwan. Nobody in the U.S., nobody really wants to hammer them on it. We just kind of like blow it off. It's not worth the trouble. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And Congress is the worst. I said, you guys are the worst. I said, you guys come over here and you tell them how great they are and they're lousy at what they do. I remember I delivered that message about 2 years ago to a congressional delegation. Not a word, not a question to me, nothing. They're pissed because they all want to show up. Mostly Republicans. They all want to show up and they all want to oh, this is great, fighting the great. And I said, look, guys, the problem is you got to hammer them a little bit. I said, they're not doing the stuff they need to do. Oh, well, how are the Chinese stopping this? They're not. Everything in Taiwan, every time, like I'll you have this one. The big thing in Taiwan now is like how labor is being abused. Well, it's all abused. This is 100% Taiwan's fault. You know why labor is not abused in Hong Kong or in other places because it flows in freely. If somebody can show up and get a job, you don't need an employment agency back in Mugabugistan or wherever the hell it is. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm just tired. I mean, and that's the problem with Taiwan. Everything is somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Never there. Oh, we've got to do this. We've got to do that. Oh, we have a lack of nurses and a lack of teachers. No kidding. Really. Isn't that because someone who can teach English in Taiwan is paid $20,000 maybe a year, and they can actually literally go work in Dubai for 80? You know what I'm saying? Or they can just go someplace else, and the reason why is because there's no demand for students. In other words, the schools don't have to pay the teachers that much. There's no demand. It's a declining market, with the exception of the elites. But anyway, other than that, I hope everything's doing well. I'm going to be going to some college, Hillsborough or whatever it is. I can't remember. Next week. I hope I picked the right college. Hillsdale. That's I hope Larry Arnn doesn't see that. But the thing is I don't know. I've reached the point now. I know everybody's face, but nobody's name. This happens when you get old. But
Hillsdale has some good online stuff too. I think I went through just some sort of a recap on some ancient Rome. I think we that's a class online. So,
but I mean, we're 43 minutes, so. If people listen to this, I hope they do. But no, I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm hoping that I see you more on TV. I also hope you write a little bit more. Your national interest articles are actually very, very catchy and very good. I wish you guys had a better promotion system over there.
Thanks. The website gets some serious numbers, and I think
it does. But they don't do. The thing is, so many people don't do a good job promoting the way they need to.
Yeah, Harry
You know,
Kazianis is now back at the National Interest
okay.
website. So yeah, I think you'll see some new energy
No,
there
I
too.
think the thing is, I really think the thing is people are looking for new ideas or looking for new things. And I think as this presidential season, heats up, that's it. And I'm like I said, I think my big takeaway from APEC was I think the elites in the Democratic Party are looking around going like, he's got to go,
Right.
you
And
know.
hey, Gavin's right there, and they
Well,
don't.
it's going to be Gavin, or it's going to be there's a couple of other people. I mean, one of the things is I don't know why, but I've never hated John Fetterman. Everybody goes, I hate that guy. I don't like. My whole thing is he's a big lug. I'm a big lug. Now I would wear a suit and a tie if I was in his position. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
my big thing with Fetterman is really one thing and one thing only. I think a lot of the hate direct. I think it's a real mistake that people do with him is but he's not a dumb guy. I mean, I've watched the guy talk from his old pre-stroke stuff. You know what I'm saying? He's not a moron completely. All right. He's very driven. He's got an idea of what he wants to do. And the other thing, too, is he beat our ass in Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah,
Because we put up Dr. Oz, the guy with the
Doctor
medical
Oz.
degree. So the guy with the successful medical show got his ass kicked by a moron. What does that make us? You know what I'm saying? I mean, who's kidding who? I mean, that's we're like the little smart ass kids going like, oh, he's a dummy. He's a dummy. Really? Well, he's the senator now. But, you know, Fetterman, the thing about Fetterman that the reason I brought him up is I think the thing is that like, probably 4 months ago, they were looking for, all right, who's going to replace him in 20, other places. I think, unfortunately, the guy's health is not good. I look at a lot of other signs around him. I think he's got real health problems,
That's too bad.
unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, he's basically able to go. In other words, he's had some goes at the anti-Israeli protesters. Look, he got it. He got Chuck Schumer to basically say he could wear a hoodie on the floor of the Senate.
Right.
So he
So
got
there
that.
is sort of populist talent on the Democrat side. It's not people always talk about Gavin or about Michelle Obama, but I guess once you open things up, you have to get
That's
Biden to
right.
pull an
Look,
LBJ and
it's
tell
not going
people
to
he's
be
not running.
Fetterman. It's not going
Yeah.
to be Fetterman. But I think Gavin is probably a little bit too slick for the school. And also, I will say this, and we could do a whole show about this. I think the Dems, I think the heart of the Democratic Party is really the squad now, the AOC.
Yeah.
I think everybody else is like there's like all people my age, in their 50s, hanging out, going, "Oh, I can't believe that." And I just
Well,
don't. I think when we see the Democratic convention this time and the wording on Israel, I think it's going to be a real problem for them. That's why I think Trump will probably have to cut a deal with somebody, near the end here. He won't like it, but he can do it. The guy has no shame, and he'll end up with like a DeSantis or a Nikki Haley on his ticket to satisfy. And I think that will have a lot of money moving towards Trump if he's up against Biden,
mhm.
or that. But you're going to have to have a Democratic president if he's going to retain support from the Jewish community. He's going to have to go against his own platform.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, that Biden, and we would close on this, but you said that Biden may turn on Israel or on the Jewish,
I think he
whatever,
will because I
voting
think the
bloc,
fact of
whatever,
the matter is,
which
look,
which makes sense because in Michigan, I mean, so the Democrats are going to win New York, lose Florida, and win California as far as sort of centers of where Jewish votes make a numeric difference. There's also fundraising, which is a different story, but Michigan is a place where if you piss off Muslims as a Democrat and you lose 1 or 2%, that might make the difference between winning or losing Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's gone to Biden right now in my mind. I talk and there's really no Republican Party in Michigan right now, but it's a sense, you know what I'm saying? But it's heavily Catholic. It's heavily Catholic. It's much more radical. In other words, and there's much more of a feel in the Detroit area. There's much more because there's so many Muslims up there. There's much more, I would say, that those. In other words, the rich kids in Connecticut who go to wherever they go to school, Taft and all that stuff, they can afford to be like, oh, or I shouldn't afford. They're the ones who are removed from it. If you go around the Detroit area, the communities there are a little bit more impacted, or they view themselves a little bit more close to what they see these Palestinian issues are. And I think there's a real blowback, coming. And so it's just my take, and it's just me, it's my take on it, that essentially we're going to see some real pressure in Michigan. I don't know if Whitmer can hold them in. It's a long time coming, you know what I'm saying? But let's remember one thing. In 2000, George Bush won the Muslim vote, and he won it because of one reason. There was a guy named Lieberman on the other ticket.
I didn't know.
Everybody, you have to go way back. I remember that. I remember talking to people about it. He won because basically they didn't want to vote for a Jew. And
wow.
I think in this case, we'll see what happens. I also think if I was inside the Democratic Party and I was in AOC's shoes, or I was on the left, 2024 would be where I come forward and make my statement. Because the Republicans are so screwed up. I mean, we still have Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these. I mean, I'm from Virginia. I want to go to Virginia and run against Virgil Goode just because I know that area. And I'm like going, what's wrong with us? Why do you keep sending this man up there, who literally, it's just like, but the point is, it's like, I think that Biden, here's my main point. Look what just happened at the State Department, where 400 or some people wrote that letter.
Oh, yes, the dissent channel. They did that to Trump, too.
Yeah. Can I tell you what there should be at the State Department? There should be 400 people out of work.
I know. It's pretty simple unitary executive theory, which isn't a theory. It's actually the Constitution. If you don't like a policy, the door is right there. This is not a welfare program, although I guess it is. It's the problem.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but look at the age of the people do it. There's a couple of senior people. They're doing this. And the problem is, I don't like the senior people because basically it's sooner or later you're going to get a guy in there like me or somebody else. And also all these people that signed this, they're tagged now. They are done.
Yeah.
They might as well go get other jobs because they are tagged. The House, the Senate, and everybody's going to have their, in other words, people are going to be, the friends that we have up on Capitol Hill, Democrat and Republican, are going to be watching these people. Also in the future, if you're a boss and you had somebody do this, your person did it. On Capitol Hill, those 150, I'm not so worried about. The reason why is I happen to know from somebody who's in there. He said basically, he goes, there's like 20 far left Congress people who are like there. He said basically 8 from every office. And he said they all wore masks. They showed up. They had that letter to, for the members of that. It was Tlaib's people, and it was the main squad who did it. They all have staffs of 13 or 14 up on the Hill. Them and the interns all signed the letter to keep their boss happy. That doesn't really bother me so much because that's individual bosses who can handle it. You happen to know that some of the leadership, none of their people signed that damn thing because they'd be out on their ass, or some of the stronger Congress people didn't sign that thing. But I think here's the problem. The problem is there is an acceptable level of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party in many sections. And I think that's going to come to fruition. I think, unfortunately, it's not pushed back on hard enough because there are electoral consequences for those who do. The hard left is really active everywhere. It's kind of like the reason why I think Tester's in trouble in Montana. Tester should run to the center every single time. I mean, if it's Montana, if you're a Democrat, it's like you run to the center and you'll be okay. But we do the same thing in the Republican Party, Kristen. It's like people tell me, these guys in New Jersey are squishes. New Jersey is a Democratic blue state. It's not a purple state. It's a blue state. If we can get somebody who votes for our judicial nominations and just doesn't go against us, that's the win for the Republicans. But yet we've got Marjorie Taylor Greene who's sitting there blasting Chris Christie. I know Chris Christie. His last couple years as governor, I'm not a fan of, and I think everybody knows that. But the fact is, he's the best you're going to get, and he's the best you're going to get in New Jersey, the very best. Yeah. You'll never get better than Chris Christie in New Jersey. Won't happen.
Right. No, it's like people complain about Susan Collins from Maine. It's like, you're not going to get.
Yeah. People go, she's a squish. I go, good. Run Marjorie Taylor Greene in Maine and lose 80-20. Anyway, sorry to keep you so long.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again with another episode.
Take care.